I feel like doing a common mission, like working towards one goal, or you gain a sense of proficiency, competency, and again, sense of teamwork, sense of family, sense of camaraderie in these things. So although you kind of like dread it, knowing that you have no choice and that
Yo, B, let's go. You may have seen the clip and maybe heard word of mouth, yet another podcast. Man, what could it be about? Is it truth or opinion? A couple of contradictions. We're here to challenge tradition and twist your vision. So we set on a mission to bring you rebel wisdom.
welcome back everybody to another episode of Rebel Wisdom. I'm Julian here with my co-host B. And today we're gonna hit a topic that's close to home for both of us. If for the listeners that don't know or viewers, we're gonna talk a little bit about the military, which B is a ex-member of, and I'm currently serving. We're recording this on Veterans Day, so it's very, very appropriate. We will take a moment to thank you for all those that have served, and that are currently serving as well. I'm definitely say, our country needs individuals like you, so we appreciate it. So what we're gonna get into is, I guess, just how service is looked at and how the trend on the percentage of people, or the percentage of people in the nation that choose to serve our country, and kind of how that's trending, and as we do in typical rebel fashion, give our take on it. However, it's going to be a little bit of a twist today. We traditionally like to rebel against historic thought processes or how things used to be, but we're actually going to rebel a little bit against the current day societal norms surrounding service in the military. I guess before we get into it, we can kind of give our little anecdotal stories, or do you want to kind of say maybe what led you to the military, or like how you came to join the military, and give a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's like I'm a third generation on my dad's side. And then I don't know, like my dad's active duty still to this day. And then there's like a natural thought going to college. It was like, hey, you should try this thing out. I was like, all right, cool. And then, did the whole thing and then just
Yeah,
got out
cool.
at the beginning of 2023.
Thank you for your service, sir. Need more people like you. Yeah, I am kind of the opposite when it comes to the generational trend. I have really nobody that served in the military. Ironically, sports kind of introduced me to the military. I played football at the Naval Academy, which its whole purpose is to generate, officers of the Navy and Marine Corps. So I had the wonderful opportunity to serve. Went to my first ship where I met this fine young gentleman right here next to me, and the rest has been history. So yeah, I think we both, again, this will be a unique topic for us because I think we both can give a lot of firsthand personal stories that speak to the topic at hand for today, which is kind of service. So I don't know about you, well, you, like you said, you had familial influence with the whole grandfather service, dad service. So you definitely may have got urged, whether subconsciously or I don't know, like did your dad ever like verbally nudge you, or like did he kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
intentionally steer? Okay, okay.
No, no, absolutely. Because like out of high school, I thought I didn't like, I just did not enjoy school so much. I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna just enlist. And then I kind of brought that up to them like towards the end of my senior year. And then they're like, no, like please, like my dad's an officer. And then he was like, hey, definitely just go to college, just give the ROTC a thing, try. And then basically I did it. Did I enjoy it? The ROTC college portion? Not really, but I got it done. And then, Navy was definitely just so many benefits overall. And just kind of add to what you were talking about in the beginning, like my take is on the rebelling side of things. You hear, I mean, I think that generally in American culture, like military is usually a positive thing, right? Like, hey, there's so many things. So, hey, like, thank you for veterans, thank you for active duty members, and so many benefits, so many whatevers. And it's kind of weird because even though there's so many patriotic Americans, the numbers don't really show that in terms of serving in particular the military. I know you can serve in other ways, but current, active duty members, usually in the last, 5 to 10 years, the numbers hasn't really shifted it much, but it's less than 1% of the overall American population that joins to serve and is active duty on military, which is the rebelling point here because we did something that, not to say, oh, we're this amazing people, because I'm not trying to say that, but we did something that, out of 100 people, less than one do, and that's the rebelling point because obviously from those numbers, not everyone does it, and majority of people don't. And I just want to shed light on, like, the opportunities there, and I think it's a really good opportunity, right? There's just definitely negatives in there. I think we'll talk about that as well, but the overwhelming majority of the benefits, positive and negative, are positive. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I agree. And I want to take it back for a minute just to speak on for those that don't know, he mentioned like enlisting and then his dad is an officer. So there's kind of two ways you can join the military, where you can enlist or you can commission as an officer. And the main distinguishing difference between those two is usually like having a degree or not. So typically, and this isn't have to be the case, but typically when people enlist, like it's out of high school, you might have a high school degree and you enlist, whereas an officer requires a higher degree. So typically you get people that are a little bit older and they have a degree, and you can commission as an officer. So I just wanted to make that small distinction. We both were lucky enough to serve as officers. And yeah, like I was saying, growing up, there was a pretty positive narrative around serving, just around service in general, but like serving your country. And then, you have the added narrative. I always heard like, oh, women love a man in uniform. Like I always heard that, although I think it's still debatable. I only ever had like grandmas wanting to take pictures with me. Like definitely the more elderly group were fascinated by me in uniform. But nonetheless, I think there are a lot of positives, as you were saying, to serving, with some inherent negatives, like you said, we'll get to. But yeah, and the narrative used to, like you said, for the amount of patriotism and patriotic individuals that are in this country, those numbers of people serving are decreasing, which is interesting. And yeah, I would just kind of interested into why. I mean, I have some speculations, but I think that narrative that was like, hey, serve your country for, even if you don't do the full time, as we call it, 20 years, we get the full benefits. Some level of service was definitely much appreciated and was like a badge of honor. Whereas now, maybe not so much. The current narrative, which is again what we're going against, and
What do you think is the negative? Like, I don't know if there's a negative image of the military or as a whole. I don't think there is,
Yeah.
but then there's a reason why people
Right.
are not choosing to join. So there has to be something that at the individual level they think about the military. They're like, oh, that's not for me. Like, what do you think that is?
Dude, I think, right, because I don't know if they're right. Then military, like what the military is, how people view the military, has necessary changed so much. But I think the scope of society and maybe the working class or the working world has, and what I mean by that is, back in the day, I feel like there wasn't as much job opportunities, and the type of jobs that were available maybe weren't as attractive. So it's just like service, you get to travel, you get stability, you get healthcare, you get, what I'm saying, those things. Whereas now it's like I can be a content creator. I can do, again, the scope of what you can do is just so much more vast that like you don't need the military as a fallback. Which I hate to say, maybe maybe it was a fallback, but it was just a more attractive option back then, whatever we're calling back then, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. Vice now, where you can do other jobs that aren't as laborious or aren't as taxing. So again, it's just like, I don't need the military. But I think it's that coupled with, I do think like people, again, the military was like a badge of honor, where now it's also like not as much of a badge of honor, and there's other job opportunities. So I think those two things coupled together, it's just people aren't drawn towards service anymore.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then it kind of reminds me, we talked about, I forgot which episode, but maybe it was like maybe hard work does not pay off episode.
Mm-hmm.
But then we talked about how, you know, Gen Z people, the older generation obviously views Gen Z as this lazy
Yeah.
generation and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're any more lazy than rest of the generation. It's kind of goes back into what you said. I think you hit it so perfectly on the head is they have more opportunities. And the opportunities, like now that I'm thinking about it, you're like, I would probably choose that too.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's the smarter, not harder
Yeah.
concept. Like,
Yeah.
military is harder. Like, that is the quintessential, like, harder. And like, people are like, why would I do that? I mean, again, if you are driven to serve, great option. If you're very patriotic, but like, if not, most people aren't just volunteering to do something that's hard.
Yeah, and a lot of things, at least I heard, which I come from a military family, right?
Yeah.
So it just honestly, this idea literally did not hit me till like a couple years ago, and I'm 29. So like pretty late in life, I finally understood this idea that people want to stay in their hometown, which I don't really have like a hometown. Like I've been to so many different places, right? So it's just like, okay, I went to school in Ohio. Okay, I served in Japan. Okay, now I'm in Phoenix. It's like, okay, just like the next place that to go to. But then I heard such a common trend of like, oh, like I don't want to travel. I want to stay near my family. That's valid points, but to rebel that, I think, if you want that personal growth, I guess success, however you want to define it, I think it's not a requirement, but a very good push from the back that you get towards success is leaving your hometown. Personally, I mean, I heard I don't want to say excuses, but I heard the reasons, right? Oh, like I want to be close to family. Why? So I can visit them. Okay, like are you visiting them every week? Like every single day? Probably not, right? If you're an adult. I mean, maybe some people, but it even like my wife's like just happens to be she's also from Ohio. This just a random thing.
Just like you were from Ohio, bro. It's cool. It's all right.
And obviously she's very close to her family too, but she's 1 4-hour flight away. She can go see them whenever she wants to, honestly. So I don't buy that. Like obviously if you live close to them, yes, it's a 30-minute drive, 2-hour drive versus a flight. I get that. But with you limiting yourself in your hometown, and I mean hopefully your hometown, you'll be lucky if your hometown was in a metropolitan area with a lot of population, a lot of opportunities. But if you're not, which I think majority of the people are not for their hometown, it would be so beneficial, career wise, money wise, just all the stuff to not leave regret behind, to go out and get out of your hometown.
Yeah.
I think I believe in it. I'm biased because I didn't have a choice and I kind of did it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have two major thoughts on that. I think, well, first is the family piece. It makes a lot of sense to me for one demographic of people, and that's the people that have a young child, because like family helps with raising children oftentimes. So it's like that. I get it. But I feel like it wouldn't be a Rebel Wisdom podcast if we didn't bring in real estate somehow. I feel like we always bring real estate in every topic. So I feel like, in hearing you say, like, you almost experience more growth when you travel, like it almost forces your growth. I feel like in my head, I naturally compare to traveling or getting away from your hometown to like forced appreciation in a house. Like when you force upgrades, when you put money into it to build it up, I don't know, build a new bathroom, change the cabinets, like you're forcing that property to be better. When you get away from home, you get cultural experiences, diversity experiences, yeah, experience different food, maybe learn another language if it's, out of your home country. I feel like it forces growth. Whereas if you stay home, it's like, not saying you can't grow, but it's like the natural appreciation when the market rises, like maybe slower. Like it'll probably grow, but like slowly over time. Whereas if you force yourself out of your comfort zone and get away from home, I feel like the odds of you just experiencing more growth, or maybe different types of just aspects of life, are greater. I don't know why my brain went there, but
That's all right.
everything.
Somehow real estate does come up in
Yeah.
everything, which is kind of funny. But no, it's like people are too comfortable, and I feel guilty of that too. And
Yeah,
but
we're human,
people, especially when they're in their hometown that they grew up, 20 years of their life,
right?
of course they're comfortable. But the discomfort is the part of recipe that makes up success. And I get it. I mean, you talked about family too. There's other negatives with the military, and I mean, I think family's probably number one or number two that after joining the military, after leaving the military, I heard about. I think I grew up fine, just because I lived as a byproduct of the military is not good for family, and
Mm.
it was definitely tough. I switched schools in fourth grade. I switched schools in sixth grade. I switched schools in ninth grade, and I switched schools in 10th
Jeez.
grade. And it's like, I don't know. I can't, I say, like I can just talk to more people and became friends. Like I guess, ability to make friends could be increased, but then that's not for everyone. I saw a lot of people that would move to a new school and not, even though maybe they're super social in their last school, they just couldn't find the right clique of people to hang out with at their new school. So I don't want to say I can't really counter that negative with a positive. But yeah, military, it's tough because especially we were both in the Navy, and we don't have kids, and obviously we didn't have kids in the while active duty either. But we'll be, like, think about 2020, right? We
Yeah.
were out to sea for like 330 days out of 365. So like you kind of think about that, and it is going to be hard because most of the time, like, the military spouse, if they have kids, they have to take care of it without the father
Mhm.
being there. With Yeah, I mean, all the housing and a lot of the finance stuff might be taken care of because they're on deployment. They're not spending that much money. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. There's so many, and we can get into it, like there's so many pros and cons of, of service. And right, like there's multiple branches. You got Coast Guard, Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army, right? We're probably, most of our experience is Space Force, most recent. Most of our experience, we'll be speaking to Navy, but I like to think a lot of it is applicable to some of the other branches, especially as we talk to like deploying and being away from family, being away from home, which is inherently hard. And speaking of inherently hard, like the mission of the military, right? Different branches have slightly different missions, but it is an inherently hard job. Like it's meant to be difficult. Which is probably why less than 1% of the country chooses to serve. Um,
hmm
but within that, which is what we're going to get to, is there are some hidden gems to take advantage of uh, once you're in service. And just to start, like there's certain jobs where you have to become very technical or skilled, i.e., like doctor or surgeon or something of that effect. But oftentimes the military too is a very like niche, can be a very like niche job in a way. Ironically, we were both, well, you were surface warfare officers, which are deemed the jack of all trades, master of none. So like maybe our specific role that we play in the military wasn't technical. But one thing I would like to advocate for the military is you get varied training. Like you get training on all different types of things, and you get to kind of, in college or in the educational realm, you kind of learn how to learn. But I think in the Navy too, you kind of learn how to learn on the fly, and like adaptability is definitely a skill I would say that's flexed often.
hmm
Um, but you just, I'm trying to think on a ship environment, like we had to learn damage control, like firefighting skill. Like unless you're a firefighter and nowhere else you're gonna learn that. Like you had to learn, how to like handle a fire hose, how to uh the administrative side is the crux of what we did. So like all kind of administrative things. I'm trying to think what other like random skills, management, like people skills, probably more so than any other job because, like you said, when you're
Yeah.
deployed, you're with who you work with, literally 24/7, like no exaggeration. Like eat, sleep, and work with eat, sleep, yeah, and work with the people like you're surrounded with. Um, so your people skills are, a lot of little skills that you get to develop that you may get one or two of these things in other fields, but that in the military, and again, the Navy from our perspective, it's just like forced on you.
Yeah, I think the number one, or shoot, there's probably number one and close number two. And number one for me was that leadership and management.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you can get this on both officer and enlisted side because, as an officer, like you're forced to, be in charge of people
Mhm.
from day one. And then everyone knows you have no idea what you're doing at
Right.
22 years old. But being in an environment, you learn quick, right?
Right.
And I mean, just think about it from the real world. Not many 22-year-old right out of college is leading a group of 20, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of, I mean, literally every single one of it they might not be more senior to you in terms of like authority and rank, but in terms of their experience, they're all senior to you. And just being able to work and just do your best to literally like lead them, motivate them, explain to them why this is important. Like you don't learn that at other places, I don't think.
No.
And the management side, right? Like coming out of the Navy and doing my job right now, stuff that people freak out about. I'm like, dude, like we'll figure it out. It's easy, It's like, well, it'll be fine.
Right.
It's literally like if what I was doing in the Navy was on a scale of 100, like what I'm doing now, at least in terms of management side, on keeping track of all these things that's going on, it's probably about like a 30 or 40.
Yeah.
The technical side will definitely be, mm, you need to learn that during whatever job you have, obviously. And so that's probably my number one, leadership management. And number two is probably problem solving. Just like how you said, college is you go learn how to learn. Because I mean, I had an engineering degree. I got an engineering degree, and people like engineering is regarded as like the tougher degree.
Oh yeah. I was
But
the
then I don't think college is anything like you don't need to be an intellect to graduate college. You don't need to be smart. It helps to be smart,
mm-hmm.
but then what matters is probably the dedication and hours that you spend on your studies. And
Consistency, yeah.
yeah, so that's college, I think. But then at least on the Navy side, like there's so many new problems that get thrown your way every single day, technical, administrative, like organizational, uh, technical within like 30 different topics. And you have no idea what you're doing. And then they're like, hey, figure out this logistical problem. And just understanding how, problem solving is usually very similar steps from like a high point of view. And then once you kind of I get the rhythm and idea, you kind of applied that to the rest of your life. I'm like, all right, I need to get to this point. Like, what do I need to do?
Right.
And that has definitely helped me out getting a job out of college or out of the military. And yeah, even on everything I said applies to the enlisted side too,
Yep.
because usually, like, unless you have something, college degree, associates, whatever, you can join as like a enlisted rank like 3 or 2 or whatever. People say E1, E2, E3, and
Yeah.
so forth. But even if you're at E1, at, I don't know the promotion cycles and the other branches, but at least in Navy, you can get to E4 in about like a couple years. And at an E4 level, like I had a couple guys, like probably I can count them, probably like 5 or 6 in my 5 years in the Navy, 5 or 6 superstar E4s that was leading, group of like 5 and 6 and managing the maintenance that they have to do.
Mhm.
And, you talk to them, they're like 20 years old.
Yes, exactly.
And that valuable experience, like I really don't think there's too many places that you can get that. So that's my number one, like thing that I took away from the military.
Yeah. I think that what you just named is very hard to replicate, that leadership opportunity and management opportunity as such so early on. You may have answered it in that kind of, but I want to ask, what transitioning, because I haven't experienced this yet, what would you say is the number one skill? And it may be that. What's the number one skill that you leveraged going from the military, transitioning out in the workforce?
Are you talking about to transition to find a job?
No. Like, what do you think was your biggest selling point that you had, like, kind of like resume item, like that you maybe have got from the military that you're like, hey, I bring this to the table?
I think the number one thing that I bring to the table as a junior officer getting out of the military is my leadership management skill, which I just talked about, and your adaptability. Because people, as the longer people stay in the service, they slowly or quickly get molded to that military lifestyle and the ideology and, the pride and how you identify yourself, right? Like, here's like, oh, I am a blank and associated with military, right?
Yeah.
But if you get in rather quickly, but then you do your time, like, you bring to the table the skills that you bring with problem solving, leadership management, we just talked about a couple minutes ago. But the adaptability piece is, I mean, you talked about it, and I think that's such an overlooked thing. You throw me in any environment, I don't want to say I'm not going to feel discomfort, but I'll get by. Like, I'm very confident. And people don't want that 20-year veteran person to be the next person to lead a company, because they're so fixated in their way of the military. Whereas you get out, probably less than 8 years, less than 10 years, you still have the ability to be molded on how that next company wants you to do it. And I think that's so valuable that I don't hear too many people talking about.
Dude, that's good. And so I think a common theme that I'm sensing already in this conversation is discomfort, but like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because you talked about it on, like, moving away from home, like, obviously that's an uncomfortable thing to do, right? Just being in the Navy or getting all these things thrown at us, discomfort. So I think that's like one of those valuable intangibles, which it kind of parallels adaptability, but just like being cool with unusual, unknown environments and being able to just thrive in it. I think that is huge. That's one of those things you kind of can't really teach. It just comes with experience or like doing it. But again, in most situations, you wouldn't have to do it that much. Even you, like you said, moving schools that many times, like, low key from a young age, you were experiencing frequent change, which is kind of beneficial once you get older. Like, definitely not ideal for a kid. Like, I wouldn't want to switch schools that many times, harder to make friends, etc.
And no one wants to.
Nobody wants to do that, but you can kind of leverage that. So I think that is a trend that we're seeing that I think would be kind of cool.
Yeah, but at least on the transition piece, I do want to throw out, I think it's so important to sell yourself on what the military brings, because if you talk to someone that's never worked with someone in the military before, right, they're not going to know, like, they say, oh, military, oh, they probably did something with guns and something not so smart. And they don't know what your strengths are. And I think a lot of, veterans, when they got out, they couldn't articulate their skill set, what they bring to the table, clearly enough to the civilian workforce. And often, I hear a lot of stories where it didn't go so well, where as long as you can communicate that properly, you have to have the awareness to understand that, civilians don't have these skills, whereas I do. If you can communicate that, I think you're going to do very well after your transition.
Yeah, I think another big thing about that's talked about just regarding the military as far as benefits go, like, obviously you have the opportunity to make money and whatnot in the military, but is the educational piece, particularly when you get out. There's multiple things you can take advantage of, right? There's the GI Bill, which is probably, I would say, from those that are in and that don't serve, the most heard about and that the military member can use, or has the ability to like transfer to certain members, that if let's say I have the GI Bill, that you can get to a kid or spouse, and that rule has changed over time, but nonetheless, a great educational benefit that can be taken advantage of. You have what, like tuition assistance, as well. So there's just multiple things that, just by virtue of you serving, that you get to take advantage of after your commitment. And it's not like, hey, I was in, I think the minimal, again, it varies from officers and enlisted members, but you have to serve a certain amount of time to get to fully take advantage of these things. It's not like, hey, I served 4 years, I have the GI Bill. You will get like a percentage of it. But nonetheless, right, this is something that you can get that, again, other jobs, you might get certain benefits like healthcare. You might get compensated via stock of the company, maybe a 401k package, or something like that. But and you can get some education benefits through other jobs as well. But I don't know if anything's as comparable to these, what you can get coming out of the military. Again,
Yeah, nothing's beating the GI Bill.
exactly. Or
Yeah,
like to X amount of months, just cover.
Yeah, it's if you get the full, it's typically 36 semester months,
some, yeah.
which it's not, like 1 month of the semester is a semester month, right?
Right.
Because they say like you typically think 12 months in a year, but then in semester months, academic year is usually like 8 months, right? Like one semester is 4 months, the other semester is another 4 months.
Right.
But yeah, like it's crazy. The GI Bill, they literally pay for. It's not just college. They pay for so much stuff.
Right.
And right now, my wife's studying for the MCAT, so she wants to go to medical school. And you hear the medical school crazy loan amounts.
Yes.
And she's gonna, like 4 years in medical school, it gets covered inside of 36 months.
Huge benefit.
If she gets into medical school, basically she can become the doctor without the huge burden of student debt that comes along with it usually.
And it's a life hack.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, not only do they pay you money to go to school. So, I don't know the exact numbers, but then they pay you E5 pay with, if they were married, they give you that like amount per that zip code of where you're going to school. And, at least so this is like a real life example. My wife had to go back to college to get her like pre-med like requirement classes for you to take the MCAT or something like that. And then, so she had to go back to school, and she was getting like $2,300 a month. Is that a lot? Is that enough for you to live? No, but you're getting paid to go to school.
Exactly, which is not normal.
Right. So, I mean, GI Bill, that's post-military service, great educational benefits. But then, in particular, for the officer side, you went to Naval Academy, so which everything was paid for.
Yep.
And I did the ROTC route, which is like a commissioning program, but you go to like a regular school that you heard of, like Harvard, right? They have an ROTC program. But so I didn't get a 4-year scholarship, which covers everything, obviously, just like 4 years of college. But I only got a 2-year scholarship. But just to say, that is an educational benefit going into the military. Like a lot of officers, they joined, like you talk to them like, hey, what did you join? And 90% of them, they give you I want to serve my country. Sure. I mean, that's everyone's story too.
I actually don't think that's most people's answers, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
At least on the officer side, I'm like, everyone's like, oh, I want to serve my country. Sure. But the point that I'm trying to make is, a lot of people, regardless if they say it or not, like they did it for educational benefits so they can get free college. And nothing wrong with that, right? It's, you were chosen to get it and you did it. You did your time.
Exactly.
So educational benefits, like even on enlisted side, you brought up tuition assistance. Like a lot of people literally finish their bachelor's while they're working in the military.
Yes.
And if you go enlisted side, I think that's the best route to do it. You're working, you're having a full-time job, and you're getting college paid for. Yet, is it a lot of work? Absolutely. And this is a real life example again. And at my current company, on my team, we had a guy that was previous Air Force, and he was a E5, and I think he did like 8 years or something, maybe less. He did less because he's 24,
Mm-hmm.
so that maximum 6 years, right? He got his aerospace engineering bachelor's and master's at 24.
Yeah.
And he's the young. I'm the second youngest one on my team at 29.
Killing it.
He's the youngest one on the team at 24. So like that's like the best case scenario, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're working, you're building all these skills, and you're getting like a technical bachelor's and technical master's covered. And there's so many things like that. The caveat is it is hard. Like you have a full-time job and you're going to school most of the time full-time, or even if you take a couple classes, it's additional work that not a lot of people are willing to take advantage of.
Yep.
But like most of the things we talk about in this podcast, I think it's one of the universal truths in life. Like you make good decisions and you work hard and you're going to be rewarded. It's that simple. It's pretty simple.
Plain and simple. Yeah. Anything worthwhile is worth work most of the time. I think that typically holds true. And I'm glad you gave those like tangible examples. And I don't even know if you realize it, like in what you just laid out, you gave examples of educational benefits like before you joined the military, during the military, and after. Like it's
Yeah,
not
sure.
just, before you get in, you can take it, or after. Like there's literally options for before, during, and after, which again, I think is pretty crazy. And not many things, if any field, can really like compare to that. So again, I think that is a huge, like we were saying, one of the most maybe sought after, or the biggest perks, I'll say, of military service is education, which is huge. And this is my personal take. I think education is just a big component of life in general. Like I would advocate for everyone to be like lifelong learners. It doesn't always have to be in the form of a degree, but for the workforce, you have to have proof, which comes in the form of a degree. So, yeah, there's just one facet that the military can help you in, which is huge. And I think going hand in hand with education is like the financial piece, because like you said, for the GI Bill, it's more than just your tuition. Like you get paid, you can get housing allowance while you're in school. So it's very hand in hand with, another big thing people hear for the military is the stability, but specifically stability and finances. Like the constant check, they pay for your housing. So right now, me being stationed in the States, you get BAH, basic housing allowance, which is allocated depending on what the cost of living is for the area that you're currently living in, and it adjusts accordingly. And then overseas, like when we were stationed together, we got, what was it, OHA, overseas housing allowance, which works a little bit different. It's like structured a little bit different, but my point is you're getting paid for your housing, and then you get your salary as well. And it's, again, just a very with the healthcare taken care of, and we already talked about education. So the military is an incredibly, not only job stability, which is a little different. That's like it doesn't really get affected by the fluctuations of economy. Like it's stable in that regard, but also just financially, like it's awesome. You have your like retirement plan, which is like, I typically say like the 401k equivalent, which is the TSP, your thrift savings plan, which is just another element of that the military offers financially. So yeah, just with education and finances alone, which we're just touching the surface of some of the benefits of service, are huge, arguably life-changing benefits that are offered for individuals. Not to mention, one thing I like is, if you're, with the military, which we kind of talked about being inherently difficult, there's oftentimes injuries or ailments that come with service, and they compensate you for that too. There is, upon you getting out the military, you're able to get certain benefits like VA benefits, that say like, hey, you served And these aspects of your health, whatever, have been affected or degraded due to your service. And depending on how you get rated, right, you get a certain percentage of that's determined through whatever method. And you get compensated for that too post service as well. And again, where else are you getting all these things? You might get certain parts, certain aspects of these things, but to get the education, financial, we take care of the housing, the salary, the health care, both during if you get hurt and then after. It's pretty unmatched.
Yeah, I was gonna say unmatched too.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
Pretty
Yeah.
unmatched.
You definitely hear on the news like all these layoffs happening and whatnot, and just backtracking to give my piece on what you just talked about too. But the stability piece, military, there's no thing as a layoff.
Yeah.
You are not gonna get fired as long as you don't break the rules.
Right.
I mean, there's certain caveats, right? Like you can't be an E1 and never promote and do 20 years. You have to climb up in the ranks.
Correct.
But if you're like a hardworking guy, like you're gonna promote. It's pretty simple. I'm sure someone can relate, but just having the mindset of for a fact, no matter what happens, you're gonna get paid on the 1st and the 15th.
Mhm.
I think that carries a little bit of weight because I think for the amount of work you do in the military, if you put that into hourly wage, I guess you could say, I think we are, or we were, or you are underpaid. Not everybody, right? We all know that person because of a salary job, you barely work. And regardless if you do well or you don't do well, you get to pay the same. That's one disadvantage of a salary position. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is you're going to get paid, which I know some people just is not the case for their, particular company that they work for and whatnot. There's always, scarcity or possible chance of something happening. If you kind of dig into the military side, I just talked about how I think everyone is mostly underpaid. I'm giving the average person that's in the service. But you kind of compare that to, a lot of your, not a lot, but like a good chunk of your pay is the housing allowance that you talked about.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Hey, we wanted to do something different this episode. So starting this episode for the next 4 episodes, if you've made it up until this point, either listening or viewing, please leave a review and take a screenshot and send that to our podcast email, which is rebelwisdompodcast@gmail.com. And we just want to do something special. We're going to give you guys a $25 gift card for the first person that does those instructions. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. We don't take it for granted. Hopefully you can enjoy this benefit.
And anything allowance is not taxed. So it was just kind of funny. Just on the salary piece, right? Because with my current employer, there's a stock bonus, there's a cash bonus, there's a lot of random stuff that you get paid for. But just looking at the monthly income, even though I make like 20-30K more than what I was getting paid in the military, I get about the same because at least in the military, you only get taxed on your basic income. And usually like out of 100, like 60% is your basic income, whereas the other 40 is like all these random allowances that you get in the service. So you're saving a lot on taxes. And the thing that you talked about with the health benefits, the one thing that, I mean, you talked about how with the health side, like they're gonna take care of you, right? In the military, like everything's. But then for the finance side of the health benefits, like the first company that I worked for when I first got out the Navy, like I was paying like $700 a month on healthcare for my wife and I, and I just like, oh shoot, like I just never kind of not never thought about it, but like when the checks actually start disappearing because of those things, you're like, oh shoot, like it's getting real,
right?
But then a lot of people in the service, they don't talk about that because they never been through paying a lot of money for health insurance. Everything's free and you are taken care of literally. So yeah, and then through a savings plan, I mean, I think it's a good service. I think it's one of the best like 401k plans out there. And then I think in terms of the, I guess, benefits that you get, I think it's okay. You put in 5%, they match your 5%. So I think that's very typical of a company. Some it might be better than some. It
Right.
might be worse than others.
We didn't even talk about like pension or anything either, like 10, 20, like
I think retirement itself is a whole separate category that we should talk about because
true.
a lot, we talked about the, financially independent and retire early.
Mhm.
We had a whole podcast on it, and we definitely talk about in, random podcasts that come up. We talk about the fire community. And if you browse the Reddit page, you hear a majority of the people are the high earners, like doctors and the tech bros that they make super crazy amount of money in New York or, like Silicon Valley, that type of people. But you kind of notice there's sprinkles, like bits and here and there of military people because
Mhm.
you do 20 years and you start, like, you get out and you don't have to wait till, like, for government jobs, usually you do 20 years, you get your pension, but then you can't start collecting on your pension until you're like 59 or 62 or whatever the age may be. But military, you get out day one, you start collecting your pension. And a lot of people is like, a lot of people choose to work, but then the other half of a lot of people, they don't have to work.
Right.
And then, imagine you enlisted at 18.
I was gonna say yes.
You're 38, and then as long as if you live modestly, you could live on that income for pretty much the rest of your life.
Yep.
With you're talking about your disability compensation if you get hurt, like there's another monthly payment that you get, and maybe you go to school after that if you wanted to, that you get another chunk.
Exactly.
And then even on the officer side, right? You get in at 22, you get out at 42.
Like that.
You talk about retirement at 42, that's a
Most people
golden
can't even
ticket for a
fathom
lot of
that.
people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just think about, even if you didn't retire, like you can go start another 20-year career at 42 to 62. Collect a pension the entire time, collecting another paycheck the entire time. And maybe if that's a pension government job too, maybe you might have two pensions, right? And then you're definitely living comfortably. So
Yes.
that, it is hard. 20 years.
I was gonna say nothing we're saying is easy, but
Yeah. Like I obviously didn't make it. Not that, I didn't want to make it, but I don't, and sounds like you're not gonna do your full 20 either.
no.
But then for the people that do, they're definitely rewarded for the time that they put in. And
As it should be.
on the retirement side and the finance side, I do want to bring the real estate back in because because I think the greatest military benefit I ever got was the VA loan.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like VA loan probably is the easiest way for anyone to get in the military to get started in real estate investing. If that's what you want to do, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want with your money. But if that's one thing that you want to do, I think you should take advantage of it. Because, think about it, like there's very few programs that offer 0% down on a house in the first place.
Yeah.
And I know of some, but there's a lot of constraints that come with those 0%. Oh, you have to meet this, you have to meet that criteria, you have to meet blah blah. Like there's so many things you have to meet. It's not practical.
Right.
It's good, just not practical. But VA loan, like there's literally it's kind of insane how low requirement that required. VA loan is a primary occupant's loan, so you usually have to live in the house for 12 months, and then you can leave and rent it out if you want to. And it's just a perfect combination. It's like the perfect match of yin and yang with real estate and military, because traditionally, typically, you do move around in the military, right? So you get to a financially comfortable spot to afford a mortgage in this current high, real estate prices. As long you buy it, you can afford the mortgage. You live in it for 3 years because that's how long your duty station was.
Yeah.
And then you go to your next duty station. Instead of selling it, keep that house and rent it out. Even if you break even, sure, you might. If you break even on the mortgage and the rent, you're not going to be making money because you have to have the reserves. You might have to fix some stuff. There might be some vacancies. I get that, but the overall idea is you buy a house at every duty station that you go to, and at the end of your career, you might have 5, 10 houses. And something that I thought was kind of crazy because in the military, they don't. A lot of people have multiple houses. They just don't talk about it. And my second ship captain, I was just talking to him like nonchalant, and like this was like towards the end of the time that he was going to be a captain. He was about to go move on to his next job. But he told me, he's like, yeah, like I own 6 houses and they're all in San Diego. I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, like literally if each house was a modest 700K, that would have been nearly, 3.5 minimum.
Yep.
At least, right? And our first chief in the Navy, God, I really hope there's someone in the Navy listening to this, because like a chief is like, it's such a it's prestigious term. Yeah. But basically for all the other service, they're E7s and above, E7, E8, E9. In the Navy, they call it chiefs, and there's a whole, basically it's like a frat.
It really is.
But but the chief that we both worked with, like I literally didn't find out till like a couple years before this. So I've been out for, like after I got out, after I started working with him, but he had like 7 houses or something like that. And he's like, he's a real estate investor. I was like, how come we never talked about this? Like the 3 years that we spent together,
right.
So there's a lot of people like that. And again, I'm going to keep saying it. It's not easy because there's inherent risk that comes along with a 0% fully leveraged property. But you make smart decisions to understand the pros and cons of buying a house at 0% down, and you weigh that against what you could get. And if you're okay with that risk, if that math works out, you're going to do well with real estate. And a lot of people say, oh, but you can use VA loan once. You can use it as many times as you want. I don't know where people are getting this. Oh, you can only use it once. Like, false. I've used it 4 times, right? And because people get it confused, because at least on the VA loan, there's eligibility. Like there's a dollar amount that you can use up to. And at least for 2024, for majority of the counties, it's like upper 700. Let's say it rounds up to 800. So let's just say 800. So you buy a 400K house one year, and next year you go buy another 400K house. There you go, right? And a couple years later, you can refinance that VA loan into a conventional loan as like a investment property. And guess what? You get your entitlement back. So you can go rinse and repeat that cycle. Right. Because as you move, you want a house to live in, right? So yeah, like VA loan, I think was the greatest gift for me personally. And I hope a lot of people in the military like get to utilize it and build wealth, because I really do think their service and sacrifice kind of warrants some kind of success.
Dude, you know what's funny? My mom, so I said I don't have any military family. My mom was she was in like the National Guard or something, but
oh shoot, I never knew that. Yeah.
Anyway, she had a VA. She had she could utilize a VA loan.
Oh, interesting.
Dude, she didn't know until I want to say like 2 years ago. My mom's 62. Like. And so and it was like in talking to me, like, just having conversations and stuff, or she maybe like knew she had it, but she didn't like really know what it was or like how to utilize it. So we just recently started like uncovering certain benefits that she has and stuff. And she was like, why didn't nobody tell me about this? So, I just say this to say, and she was like surprised at like, kind of what you're saying, like how good the VA loan is. I mean, as far as like housing loans, again,
you're not beating
Unmatched. Yeah, exactly. So I just thought that was like a hilarious conversation. But to your point, it's just a huge benefit. And again, it's just one of many. Staying kind of on the financial topic, I do want to go back a little bit when you were saying how we were talking about just like salary and finances while you're like currently in the military. And I guess this would be a negative, but just something I want to throw out there as a point of comparison for people who might be listening or whatever. that, you said at your current job, right? Like I think you get performance bonuses or cash bonuses or whatever. What you don't get in the military is that some people are pissed about because, you can outperform somebody and it's not even
Yeah.
close, but your salary is your salary and it's solely based on like rank or like time and rank or rate if you have one, I guess. So that could be a negative that, you could have somebody that's performing here, you can have somebody performing here, but if y'all been in the same amount of time, like competition wise, it is the same. So I do want to note that there's no cash bonus, there's no performance bonus. There is like an enlistment bonus where if if you're an enlisted member and you choose to opt for more time, you get a bonus there. But again, there's nothing that's performance based, which a lot of people aren't a fan of, or like I personally, in most jobs, you want to be compensated for what you're doing, and that goes to your point you were making that people being underpaid, because also some things that are unmatched in the military is hours. Like you're deployed, you live in your work environment. Like you could quite literally be working 20 hours a day, which is dang near inhumane. But it's just like when you say duty calls, like that's duty calls.
I
Like,
think current military, like, I guess execs, the higher ups, like they're starting to pick up on this trend finally in the 2020s.
yeah.
But I don't know, it's not, the hours are very unhealthy for a lot
My god.
of jobs, and I I'm sure in the military, I want to say blanketly military, but I'm speaking personally for the Navy. And for, because you think about jobs, like people have this like idea that, oh, like Marines is the hardest. Maybe it is, right? Maybe being deployed is the hardest. I don't know. I never been deployed on like a desert. I've been deployed on a ship.
Right.
But I mean, take what I say with a grain of salt, because I'm gonna be super, super, super biased. But I think being on a ship for 9 months straight is much harder than anything else you do. Maybe the harder thing might be being 9 months in a submarine. Maybe that might be it. But people don't understand think about, you go to your job and you sleep, eat, brush your teeth, work out,
Everything.
play games,
Train.
you cannot leave your building that you're in.
Yeah.
You can go to the roof and get some sun. You cannot leave the building. You have no cell phone service. If you have Apple Music, good for you, because you got it for 30 days until it gets cut off, right?
Right.
And then a lot of people want to work out because there's literally nothing to do after work. And then, you're trying to do some bench press, and like you can't get it up, but then a good wave hits and you get it up, right?
I was gonna say, and on top of that, the building you're in is rocking. You might get sick because your whole building's shaking at any given time. Like, yeah.
But like these are the nuances that like they don't typically talk about in the general public, because like I would go in deployment weighing in like 190. Like my natural weight is probably like 200. But then maybe by the time like back in like Navy, maybe I weigh like 190, right? But I would leave at 190 and I'll come back like 155.
Oh, God.
And you gotta, dude, I'm 6'1",
Jesus.
right? And it's not because I was working out so much on the ship, which I was, is because I'm literally throwing up every other day because I get so seasick. And
Jesus.
I, like, before, the reason, like, I was so determined to get out. And I remember writing on my notes app on my iPhone, I was like, hey, this is for future me, because, when you're on land, everything is good, everything is chill. You got cell phone service all the time. You can watch YouTube at night. Please get out, because this is so miserable.
Dude, 155. No wonder you can't see me on the basketball court, bro. That's why. Gotta get that weight.
No, it was bad. It really
I didn't know you were out like that.
Yeah, but then I'll probably gain back like 20 pounds in like a month. But like
Chips.
that, yes, absolutely. I love chips. But then like the work hours that you're talking about, because you got to realize you have like your maybe like anywhere from 6 to 8 hours of regular work that you do. And there's this thing called watch, which is such BS. Imagine go to your job from 9 to 5. You know, you have your lunch break, you get off at 5, maybe you go to dinner. And imagine you right after dinner, you go to your like watch station and do a whole completely different job for 6 hours
For
straight.
5-6 hours, yes.
And so maybe you get done at like 7 after dinner. Maybe you have to go brush your teeth. Maybe you have to do laundry or whatever. You go watch at 7 and you get off at like 2. And then you go to sleep and you repeat that cycle.
Mind you, in the gaps of all that time, like you said, you have to shower, laundry, sleep, eat. Like, God forbid you want to read a book or do, something that's not a necessity. It's little to no time for that. Yeah.
Here's the cherry on top. You don't get weekends off.
Yo, what's the weekend?
Which, yeah, exactly, right? It's so, with all that being said, I think I'm very biased, but I think being on deployment in the Navy is the hardest thing. But obviously, whatever branch that if you're in the Air Force or Space Force, no one's gonna argue with it. But then Army, Marines, maybe Coast Guard, they have a valid point, and maybe you can combat what I'm saying. And then, yeah, like after 9 months, you go back into port, and every 3 days you have to sleep over on the ship.
Right.
It's kind of the hours is kind of insane.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
And I think so. That's obviously a con, but that kind of leads into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is a positive. Is you shoot? I don't even. I view it as a positive. Some people may view it as a negative.
Let's get into
but your sense of purpose and your identity, sense of purpose and your identity as like a military person, right?
Oh, yes. Oh my God, I was thinking the same thing. Because like you said, doing all that stuff, like you're with the same people doing everything you just named. So like, I feel like doing a common mission, like working towards one goal or even just doing something for that long, like you gain a sense of proficiency, competency, and again, sense of teamwork, sense of family, sense of camaraderie in these things. So although you kind of like dreaded the knowing that you have no choice and that you have to live in it, which I think to your point, why some people could say it's a bad thing. But once you come to that realization, like, look, I'm here, I might as well just own it. I'm with these people. I'm going to be doing this job. Yeah, it kind of, you can form a sense of purpose, which kind of feels good after a while. Now maybe that's some people in the military like to say like drinking the Kool-Aid or you get brainwashed. But no, you truly do. Like I've met some of my best friends. Like we wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for my first duty station. Us being in Japan together on the same ship, and we got countless stories serving together. You know what I mean? So, you find your people, you make it as fun as it can be. I feel like it only can be so fun, but there's good times. You haven't even touched on the travel piece. You do get to pull in, some different parts around the world. But I don't want that to detract from this main point, which is that true sense of purpose. You're doing training. Sometimes it's intense, sometimes it's not. But you can start to feel that growth. And I mean, it does feel good. You feel like this is not one of the jobs where you feel like, I don't know, you gotta, like right now, I'm still very much in the Navy, but I'm at a computer all day. And sometimes it's hard to get a sense of like, hey, is what I'm doing, am I making a tangible difference? And even when you're deployed, you're not necessarily doing something where you can maybe like quantify or see, but it certainly feels way more purposeful than I would say what I'm doing now. And then I would argue, again, I haven't done other jobs, but probably a lot of other jobs as well.
Because it also, like, at least on a ship, it affects, like, what you do most likely affects the people that work for you, people that you work with. And then, like, it's like a legit, like a community. And like the closest thing I can relate to is like playing sports or rushing for a fraternity, because you do the hard stuff together, and when you share a very hard length or long time doing that hard thing, like you come out at the end with like you're gonna be very tight with your buddies on the ship. And like you said, the memory, like I would never trade the 5 years I did in the military for anything else, because it was by far the hardest thing I did in my life, but it was also the most rewarding, and it set me up pretty much for the rest of my life.
But see, I don't think that's a coincidence. Like I think there's a correlation between what you just said.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
Yeah.
And this this idea that I don't think I think a lot of younger Americans are losing a grip of, and it's not the lazy piece because I don't believe in that, but it's the idea that you make the right choices, and it's hard to know what the right choices
I'm
are,
gonna say, yeah.
but like some of these things. Like you don't know every right choice, but you know the basics. You know if you save your money and invest it, it's gonna be good for you. You know if you do hard things, it's gonna be good for you. You know if you work out, it's most likely gonna be good for you.
Right.
So you know all these things, but then people still don't want to do it because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone, and they blame whoever when they don't succeed. Oh, it's because of this. It's because of that. No, it's not because of anything. It's because the choices that you made. And this applies to if your family's rich, if your family's poor, if you're white, if you're black, if you're Asian, anything. At least in the United States as a free country and a first world country with full opportunities, right? Like you make the right choice, and most of the time you're gonna get rewarded in some way, shape, or form. It might not be money, which at least in the military, I think it can translate into money, but it doesn't have to be. I think you just gain so much better stuff more than money, like experience, friendship, leadership skills,
Mm,
memories.
yes. Yes.
So just a little side tangent, but I watched the if people listen to the podcast, like everyone knows that I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I do want to say I'm more fan of the book than the author, who is Robert Kiyosaki, because I mean I used to look up to him, but then he's saying crazy stuff now, I think. But I think or in recently him going on other podcasts, he brings up a really good point. Like a lot of people or like the podcast host asked about, like what do you think about today's generation of men? It's men in particular, right? Man, I don't want to say the wrong message because anyone can join the military even if you're female. Like there's
Mhm.
so many great females I worked with in the Navy, but this is just particular for men because traditionally military is like a manly job, right? Like you can't deny that. So the podcast host asked Robert Kiyosaki, he was like, "Hey, what do you think about today's generation of men?" And he was talking about how basically they're acting like little girls, right? Is that everyone? No, absolutely not. But then I think everyone can at least relate to what I'm trying to say. And we kind of lost that sense of pride and the patriotism that you kind of brought up in the very first, very or in the first couple minutes of the podcast. And I don't know. Regardless of male, female, I do think it would be good to join the military overall because of everything we talked about,
Oh,
but
yeah.
also like you build like discipline, and I think patriotism is overall a good thing. If you go to the extreme ends, like I guess you don't want to be like a loyalist
Yeah.
to your
Yeah.
country. It sounds kind of weird, but then like I think a patriot is like a good trait to have overall.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah,
for sure. And
sorry, another little tangent.
no, dude. I think for the listeners or viewers, like it's easy to see that like we're passionate about this topic and have a lot to say on it. It's probably gonna be one of our longer ones. But no, dude, I feel where you're coming from. And in that sense of purpose too, right? Like you compared it to a team, which it very much is a team, community, family, even it could become in the more positive instances. Um, but I think the cool thing about that sense of purpose is that first off, the environment forges a bond, which you were saying, you go through hard things with people, and it's literally like molded through what you go through. It's almost like hard to not create like special bonds. And in that sense of purpose, there's also a strong sense of like diversity, I think, in the military,
Mm-hmm.
which you can get, other places, but it's almost twofold in the military because in the military you have, people from all over. And I remember when I was a midshipman, which is basically like I was in school, but like in training on a ship, and you get briefed and everybody's telling you their story and stuff. And there's this one guy, I forget where he's from. He was from like the country in a very rural, like excluded area. I forget what state or whatever. He was like, I hadn't interacted with a black person until I got in the military. I just thought that was so
That's
profound.
crazy.
And he was like mad, like he was happy. He was just like, I didn't experience like this type of human until I was, late teens, man, whenever he got in, early 20s. And I was like, that's insane. So you couple that, right, with the diversity in the military, with Navy specifically, travel by water, like all over the world, different ports, like you get that diverse experience, like cultural experience, the experience of travel, which some people haven't been out of the country before they join the military, or some people haven't interacted with foreigners before. So, and again, this goes back to the growth we talked about, like the forced growth. Now you're implementing diversity, you get these cultural experiences, opportunity to travel, mind you. This is free travel. Now, granted, like you're working every day, it's not easy. It's gonna remain hard, but the times you pull in a port, that is typically a point of leisure in the military, again, specifically the Navy. So, it's fun, it's new, and I just can't have this topic without advocating for like that the diversity and the travel exposure that you get, because I think that is also a huge selling point. But not even me trying to sell it, because like we said, I am not doing my full 20 years. I am also getting out. But some of my most fond memories are with the people I work with. So just the different people I got to experience, and definitely the travel and like hitting the foreign ports, all the different countries and cities that I've got to go to. Not to include living in. I lived in Rota, Spain, and Sassuolo, Japan. Like I know, I can't say I don't know for a fact. I almost guarantee you I would not have lived in those areas or even outside the United States had it not been for the military. And now, like you said, like I wouldn't change it for the world. So I think those are just huge. Again, I don't want to say selling points, but just like stuff to consider. Yeah, it's difficult work, but it offers things that you can't get elsewhere, like flat out. I think they're very important.
What we're trying to say is go to your local recruiter this weekend.
Recruiters to pay us, sponsor us.
And get these
Yeah,
benefits.
like I just can't emphasize it enough, the how many different positive things. And right, it all comes down to your personality, not personality, but like your perspective, rather, I guess, like attitude towards it, because it's so easy to get down in the military, and some people argue, there'll be a lot more, I don't want to say bad days than good, but just like harder days than easier ones, for sure. But you gotta control what you can control. You can control your attitude. You can control your effort. Like if you give a good effort, stay positive, like you can make it worthwhile. And again, it will set you up for life.
Have you cried in the Navy?
Have I cried?
Yeah, in the Navy. Not while in the Navy, but like because of what you do in the Navy.
That's a great question, bro. I feel like I have, but I can't remember the incident.
I cried 3 times.
Damn, I know. I feel.
I remember.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, it was just so hard.
No,
Like,
first ship,
damn
I
it,
did.
like-
Yeah, like I don't remember the incident, but I know I did. I don't think I did on my second ship, but I know I did when we were together, Germantown. Yeah.
Okay, you're right. All three of those was on my first ship too.
Because I think we were newer to the environment. We're getting acclimated. Like that's our first tour. So second ship, we kind of knew what the job entailed. We kind of knew what we were doing a little bit more. Quick side story, because it's getting lengthy. I just told the story. I don't know if it was yesterday, but this week, about how you and I had to bail one of our sailors out of jail in Japan, which is a funny story I won't get into. But that just speaks to like the adversity and like don't know what you'll ever have to deal with in the Navy. Like we literally had to bail someone out of jail in a foreign country, foreign to me, not necessarily you. And it's just a wild experience. But again, we were together, so we kind of made it fun in a way. Do you remember that? I didn't want to get into it, but just know, yeah, we had to get.
Dude, man, I think you should tell the story.
Yeah.
Can I tell the story? I think it.
All right, go.
I want to tell the story because I think my perspective is better than your perspective, or probably. But basically, this guy, like, he was working for Julian, like directly under him, and I was in like the sister division. So like basically, we'll do the same exact job for just different groups of people, but all of our like stuff like integrated together. So we work closely together.
Yep.
But basically, he was a trouble kid, and he had a history of getting in trouble multiple times, and we knew that, right? And basically, we lived in Sasebo, Japan, which is near Nagasaki, Japan. If you know, it's in the most southern island. That's not Okinawa.
Mind you,
And
this
the
guy you're
biggest
talking
city
about
on the island,
is
it's
only a couple years younger than us. That's crazy too. Like, we're not that much older than this guy, but continue.
okay, yeah. But basically, a spot to go out to was a city called Fukuoka, right? And it's the biggest city on the island. I love that city, first of all, right? And we had very fun memories there. But so he goes to this city, and it's not like you can't. Like everyone can and everyone does. And if you ever go to Japan, Fukuoka definitely one of the you should visit. But so he basically like he has to come back to work, right? So he I don't know why he doesn't take a bus or a train, which is so abundant in Japan, but he decided to take a taxi,
You might have been drunk.
which it's like it's like a 2 hour cab ride, right? So like it's gonna be a few $100, maybe like $300-400, and he gets there, but then no, he was drunk because he didn't wake up when he got to Sasebo. So the cab driver is trying to wake this dude up, and like he just doesn't wake up. He's knocked out, and the guy's like, what do I do? Like he's like Japanese cab driver that I guarantee barely spoke a lick of English to this guy that's just passed out in the back of his car. So basically, he tries to make an effort to drop him off. He's unresponsive. So the guy's like, all right, I need to continue work. He goes back to Fukuoka with him in the car and drops him off at the cops, right? So imagine it's like $300-400 times 2, right? So it was a little bit shy of like $1,000 basically. So, and then he gets taken out to jail, and then obviously the cops like eventually find out like where he works and what ships, and we get contacted because he works for Julian, right? And we find this out, and basically it came down to, hey, let's go bail. Like the ship was like, hey, let's go bail him out. And
The Chiefs had to like get money together. Back to the Chief, like
yeah, so the back to the Chiefs, the E7s, like
Yeah.
7, E8, E9, they have like a little fraternity that they have their it's their own organization within the ship, so they have money allotted. They do fundraising. They have a pot of money, and they generously spend that money for the bail money. And this is all in like Japanese yen, right? I don't know how that happened. So the city Fukuoka, we just randomly, like, for the past 3 weekends, we went up and just like partied there. And then we were making and then you just couldn't. And this is this is a Friday. I remember this is a Friday.
Oh, that's great.
Because we're like, would it be crazy if we went to Fukuoka every single weekend for a month?
Yeah.
But that we couldn't because like for that weekend. But then we were like, dude, I have to go to Fukuoka to like bail out my guy. Like what it like he's safe. Everything like
Yeah.
it sounds messed up that I'm trying to make a joke out of it, but like he was all fine. So he has to go pick him up. And I like convinced my boss. I'm like, hey, like we can't send him by himself to go to Fukuoka.
right.
Like I speak Japanese. I should go with him. And it's like we all work together. And then basically I got to convince my boss that I should also go during a work day to Fukuoka, take that like the white like 10 people seater van.
Government van.
And yeah. And then so we started driving, and the entire time we were there, like for people that don't know, like Julian is like a master artist at freestyle rapping.
I watched
And then you take one look at me, you probably know that I can't rap. And like, but then like I'm getting the hang of it, right? Because we hang out so much.
Yeah.
And I'm like getting taught, and I'm going against like very good people, talented people. So I'm like picking my skills up. But then the 2-hour van ride, the entire time we practiced like sessions of how to be a better rapper, freestyle rapper, basically. So for 2 hours, we had an instrumental playing, and we do different exercises, and
Great times.
and then eventually, like we finally get to the police station, and we literally apologize for like 30 minutes with our heads like bowing down to the police, like like saying so sorry. Like we give the bail money. We finally pick this dude up. We go back home, and even the ride home was crazy because like we had like 30 minutes to go, and we're like on E on the gas.
Oh, I don't remember that.
If you remember that, yeah. I was driving. I was getting so nervous. I was like, oh my god, like what are we gonna do? And then in hindsight, like I don't know why we just didn't pull into a gas station and
Yeah.
get gas.
Yeah.
But then we were like, oh, that means like we have to pay for it. Like we don't have the
Yeah.
government credit card. But like let's just try to make it. We basically end up making it, and like here's like the E thing, and we're like here, like somehow goes past it by like a good bit, and then I just parked it where like where it was parked. And I was like, all right, good to go. And yeah, it just like
Easy.
that was like one of the work days.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll never forget that. It was crazy.
Dude.
We went to Fukuoka every single weekend, technically, because it was Friday. And yeah.
Yeah. Great time. Yeah. Literally just told that story. Oh man.
So join the Navy, get your benefits.
You're right. Yeah, I mean that just goes to show, speaking of that, kind of building like working with people, living with people, forging these bonds, and it truly becomes like a little community. And you'll so to say like you'll get your experiences and you get your stories out of it. In the Navy, we like to say sea stories, which is just basically code word for like crazy things that have happened to me while I'm in the Navy is like deemed a sea story. So like for us, that's like one of our sea stories. Although it's not like we're at sea, but it's just
At sea, yeah,
while
yeah.
in service. And that's what we call it in the Navy. I'm sure the Army, Marines, they have their versions of their stories, but like that would be deemed one of our sea stories. So yeah, you build this sense of community, this network, and again, like you can have your fun times. You'll get your personal experiences from it, but there's that's one of many things, as we talked about on this podcast, that you can derive from the Navy. It's not all bad. Like, yes, it's inherently bad. And even speaking now, right, the current climate of things that are going on geopolitically or whatever, like, yeah, it can get scary, and that's why it is so heavily compensated. But it's a very honorable job. It's a very noble job. It's very purposeful. And people join for all these different reasons we named. Like, there's not one reason to join. Some people join and get away from their current situation at home. Maybe there's bad living conditions or what have you. Some people join to travel. Some people join for money. Some people join for stability, and that's okay. Like, everybody's story is individual. But we're just saying, like, much like this, if you go into this with an open mind, but try to draw from all these things, like maximize the travel, maximize the finances, maximize the personal relationships, I truly think you can get something like wholesome from it and also beneficial. And kind of like you were saying, like, I don't know what my life would look like had I not joined the Navy. I like to think I'd be doing okay for myself, but I know for a fact the Navy has afforded me certain benefits, some of which I haven't even got yet. Like, I'm still in, like, I haven't used or received yet, that I will get or will continue to reap, that I wouldn't have gotten elsewhere, no matter how hard I worked or no matter where I got myself. So using the Navy for me in all of its grandness was kind of it was like a springboard to get me to a point in life where I definitely worked or wanted to be, but I feel like I worked to be too, and now just hopefully continue a positive trajectory, and that is what I think current society, or maybe Gen Z, or those that the demographic that would typically be getting into the Navy now, don't see or nobody talks about or can't grasp. Maybe they don't have a connection that ironically aligns more so with traditional wisdom on this particular topic that we just wanted to shed light on and speak to, because believe it or not, there's a lot to get out of it. And again, I won't dismiss the fact that it is, and I'll say it the last time, that it isn't hard or it isn't inherently dangerous. Like, working on a ship is deemed like an industrial environment. So literally just by being there, by waking up in that environment every day, you're more predisposed to like injury or, God forbid, death. You're in harm's way, right? But again, it's purposeful, it's meaningful, and there are a lot of positives to draw from it. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of my experience. And B, I don't know if you have anything like in conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I hope particularly for this episode, if you're listening to it and like it's fine if you're not gonna join. Like it's not for everyone. Not
Not
everyone. No one.
everywhere,
Yeah. But then if you can share that, if you can share this with someone that maybe on the younger side that maybe thinking about joining, maybe thinking about joining any other branch besides the Navy. But yeah, if you can maybe share that with, someone younger that's thinking about it, I think we'll definitely, I think hopefully they learn something and we'll definitely appreciate it.
Yeah.